Hello, today we will be doing Biology Paper 2, Extended Multiple Choice, October-November 2021. Now, first question. It says here that all living things can remove toxic materials and other substances that are in excess of requirements. Now, what is this process called? This process is known as excretion. Excretion is to remove toxic materials, waste of metabolism from our body, and therefore the reasonable answer here would be B. Number 2. Two animals have an identical sequence of amino acids in one of the proteins found in their cells. What does this indicate about these animals? Well, so we have to pay attention here that it says identical sequence of amino acids, and therefore it should be because that they share a common ancestor. And because they share a common ancestor, they have the same amino base DNA sequence. And therefore, the reasonable answer here would be D. Number 3. The diagram shows some tissues in part of a plant root. The arrows represent the movement of water into and across the plant root tissues. Now, how many different tissues are shown? Well, from here we can count the number of how many tissues that are shown. So, firstly, we can see that there is the root hair cells. Secondly, we can see that there is the spongy mesophyll. And thirdly, we can see there is the palisade mesophyll. And fourthly, we can see that there is a xylem. And therefore, if we count them all, there would be 4 different tissues shown here. So the reasonable answer here would be B. Now, the length of the mitochondrion is as shown, the actual length they have given us, and we have to find the magnification. Now, remember, when we talk about magnification, we have to remember the formula of magnification, which is image size over actual size. And therefore, we have to use this formula to figure out this problem. Now here, we have to take note of the different units that are given. And there is one given in micrometers and one that is given in millimeters. So make sure you know how to convert between those two, because 1 millimeter is 1,000 micrometers, and 1 micrometer is 1 of 1,000 millimeter. And so you really have to get this going with the unit conversion, or you wouldn't be able to solve these questions. So okay. Next question. It says that there is a cilia, there is a cytoplasm, there's a nucleus. Where are these cells found? Well, these cells are found in the bronchus, or in the windpipe of the body. Now, question 6. Which statement about diffusion is correct? Well, for diffusion, you have to know that diffusion doesn't require energy. It is a passive form, and that is different, and that is opposite of active transport. And the process requires the random movement and the variation movement of the particles, and therefore the reasonable answer here would be D. The process involves the random movement of particles. Question 7. The diagram shows the uptake of mineral ions by root hair cells. In the picture below, we can see there's a cell membrane, and it's a structure labeled X. Now, what is X? The question basically asks what is X. So in the question here, you will see that it is asking for the uptake of mineral ions. And mineral ions are used from active transport, and active transport requires energy. And how does the mineral ion get transported? Well, they get transported by these protein molecules, protein carriers that are on the membrane of the root hair cells. And so the reasonable answer would be the protein carriers. So it is a protein. Question 8. The basis on one of the strands of DNA molecule have the sequence shown A, E, T, C, T, G. Now remember, A and T always pairs up, C and G always pairs up. And so let us write this T, T, A, G, A, C. And so which one of the following matches this one? It is D. So D is the reasonable answer. Number 9. In a photosynthesis experiment, a plant is left in bright sunlight for several hours. A leaf is then removed from the plant and tested for starch using iodine solution. A diagram shows the leaves from the plant that was used in the experiment. There is the white area, there is the green area, and if iodine is present, if starch is present, it turns blue-black. If starch isn't present, it will stay brown. Now, we know that the green area contains chlorophyll and chloroplast, and that is where photosynthesis mainly takes place. And where photosynthesis mainly takes place, it produces food, such as starch. And therefore, the reasonable area that would be present would be the green area, where the iodine solution would turn blue-black. As you can see, is going to be the green area that's going to be turning blue-black. So C is a reasonable answer. Question 9. So the moment I see this type of question, the way that I would consult or figure out this question is by looking at the x-axis and the y-axis. The x-axis usually is the independent variable, and the y-axis usually is the dependent variable. Now, if we take these things in consideration for the effect of pH enzyme action, the factor that would be changed would be the pH. And how do you figure out about the enzyme action? Well, it is the rate of reaction, and therefore A is the reasonable answer. Number 11. 4 test tubes were set up as shown in the diagram, in which test tube is starch digested most quickly. Now, the enzyme that digests starch is an enzyme called amylase. So if we look at the diagram, we should only be choosing the one that contains amylase because it digests the starch. But then, however, when we look at it again, there is this one on the left that is saying 15 degrees, and the one on the right saying 30 degrees. And the one that would be fastest would be the 35 one with the enzyme. So C is a reasonable answer. Question 12. One of the plants is kept in the light. One of the plants are kept in the dark. And here we can see clearly on the diagram that there is one with the black paper, and where there is black paper, light cannot penetrate through it, so there is no photosynthesis occurring on the right. But there is photosynthesis occurring on the left because there is no black cover that covered it. So after a few hours, which color would the hydrogen carbonate into solution in each test tube? Well, this solution is testing for carbon dioxide. And if it turns purple, this carbon dioxide has decreased. And if it turns yellow, carbon dioxide has increased. Okay, so the one with the photosynthesis would be using the carbon dioxide to produce food. And therefore, theoretically, we would be able to tell that the one in the light should be purple because it is using a carbon dioxide and the carbon dioxide is decreasing, so purple. And the dark, for the one with no photosynthesis, carbon dioxide would not be used up, and therefore it would remain yellow. So B would be the right answer for this question. So question 13, we can see that the surface view of the part of the epidermis of the leaves. Now we can see that there are 3 pairs of the guard leaves, and 3 pairs is like 3 times 2, which is 6. So there are 6 guard cells that are present, and therefore the answer would be 6C. Now, question 14. The diagram shows a part of the alimentary canal and associated organs. Where does most water absorption takes place? Most of the water absorption takes place in the ileum, or the small intestine. And where's the small intestine? It is B. 15. The diagram shows a large food molecule changing into a smaller food molecule. So what is the process X? X is the process of digestion, specifically chemical digestion. So the answer is C. Okay, question 17, 16. Instantly from the diagram, we can see that one on the right is wilting, and then the one on the left is not wilting. And wilting occurs because of the loss of water, or water molecules, H2O. The one on the right is fairly maintained and fairly turgid. So what is the correct explanation in the change of appearances of leaves? Well, they have become flaccid because of transpiration, and thus the answer is A. For question 17, translocation, the movement of sucrose and amino acids in the phloem tissue of the plant from the source to sink. Which organ can act as a source? Well, the one that can act as a source is the storage root, because it can act as both a source and a sink in general. Now, 18. Which component of blood produces antibodies? Well, this is just plain out simple. It is lymphocytes. Therefore, A is a reasonable answer. Okay, question 19. What are shunt vessels and what do they do? Well, shunt vessels are a kind of a blood vessel that provides an alternative pathway from the arterioles to the venules. It bypasses the operations of the capillaries, and therefore, essentially, it literally just creates a path from arterioles to venules. And the correct answer here would be B. Now, question 20. How is the pressure inside the lungs changes when taking one breath in? Well, when we inspire, we are taking the breath in. So the pressure, the atmospheric pressure from the outside would decrease. And as a result, it would be B. That is reasonable. As the pressure is decreasing because of the atmospheric pressure. Okay, question 21. Some of the features that helps to defend the body against pathogens are listed. Which features prevent pathogens from entering body tissues? Well, for this question, well, we have mucus, skin, phagocytes. Well, the mucus in skin and the stomach acid helps with the to prevent the body against pathogens. So 1, 2, and 3 would be correct. And so let's see the options here. So B is the correct answer. The diagram shows the apparatus used to measure the So when we look at this diagram, we can know that this is the potometer, and the temperature is increased from 20 to 40. What happens to the movement of the bubbles as the temperature increases? Well, as the temperature increases, the transpiration rate also increases. And if the transpiration rate increases, the rate at which the bubble is pulled up would also increase. So in other words, it would move more quickly towards the seeds at 40 than at 20. And therefore, the reasonable answer here would be A. 23. Which statement about lactic acid is correct? Well, lactic acid is produced in the muscles, and it transports the lactic acid to the liver after exercise, not from liver to muscle. So D is definitely wrong. And so the correct answer would be B, because lactic acid buildup in tissue can lead to an oxygen death. Okay, so what are the areas X, Y, and Z? Well, if you have studied excretion, the topic of excretion, you would know that Y is the ureter, and the region where are labeled is the pelvis. X is the cortex, and Z is the medulla. And therefore, we have to find the one that is, so it is B. So B is the reasonable answer, 25. Structures listed are part of the nervous system. In a reflex arc, which structures are connected to a motor neuron by synapses? Well, okay, let's write out the whole reflex arc. So firstly, the receptor cell, and then it will send impulses to the sensory neuron, and then it's going to send the impulse to the relay neuron, and then it's going to send it to the motor neuron, and which the motor neuron will send instructions back to the effector. And therefore, the effector and the relay neuron are the one that connects to the motor neuron. So therefore, 2 and 4, so C is the reasonable answer. Okay, question 26. Which of the processes is part of a negative feedback process? It could not be A, B, or D, but it is C, because when your blood glucose concentration is increased, we have to lower it down by converting the glucose into the glycogen by the hormone insulin, and therefore C is the reasonable answer. Okay, question 7, which was the pupil reflex and the origin, right? So firstly, let's draw the iris. So the iris is consistent of two muscles, the radial muscles, which are those streaks of lines, and the circular muscles, which are circles. And then there's a pupil in the middle. So when you go into bright light, your pupil is going to become smaller. And how does it become smaller? Well, the circular muscles will contract, and the radial muscle will relax, and therefore the size of the pupil will be smaller. And in this case, the only possible answer is B, and therefore B is the correct answer. Okay, question 28. A seed is placed and grown on a rotating disc. And what will be the appearance of the seedling shoot after 7 days? Okay, so this diagram that we see here, it is called a clinostat. And a clinostat negates the effect, or otherwise cancels out the effects of gravity or light. And so when the seed is spun, it loses its sense of gravity, and therefore it doesn't know whether to go, whether to sprout upwards or downwards, or in any direction, but in the direction that it is spinning. So A is the correct answer. 29. Okay, they use asexual reproduction to produce coffee plants which produce coffee beans. What is the disadvantage? Well, the disadvantage is that all of the plants are equally susceptible to the same disease because they are all genetically identical. So the reasonable answer is D. Okay, question 30. Which statement about the human HIV is correct? Well, antibodies cannot be made. That is really false. HIV infections can be treated with antibiotics. No, they cannot be. You have to use something called antiviral medicines. And HIV destroys lymphocytes. That is correct. And HIV is not spread by coughing. It is spread by sexual contact. 31. Which statement about a diploid human cell is correct? Now, question 31. Which statement about a diploid human cell is correct? Well, there are 22 pairs of chromosomes and 2 sex chromosomes, so B is correct. 32. The gene for hemophilia is found on the X chromosome, and the allele for hemophilia is recessive. In the pedigree diagram, the dominant allele is shown as XH, and the recessive allele is shown as X small h. What is the probability of M having a hemophilia? And hemophilia, as we know, it is a recessive condition. Now, for this question, I would like to draw a Punnett square, and the probability ranges from 0 to 1. And you can see from the pedigree diagram that the circle represents female and the square represents the male. Okay, so we are going to draw a Punnett square to figure out the probability of child M having hemophilia. So we write out the mothers and the fathers and cross them together. So X H, XHH. So you can see that there are two XY, and that's the boy, and the boy is going to have a 50% chance of getting hemophilia. So 0.50 is the correct answer. 33. What is an adaptive feature of xerophytes? Xerophytes are plants that live in dry deserts or regions. Well, for them to live in those dry deserts, this has to be so that they have thick cuticles to prevent the water from drying out. So D. Okay, next question. Which sections of this graph represents the log phase? Well, the log phase is B. Or the log, do you call it the log phase or the exponential phase? Yes. 35. A species of insects usually have a pale color wings. This helps to camouflage them in the tree trunks. A few of the insects in the species have darker wings. After a number of years, the tree trunks have become darker in ecology due to environmental changes. Which process caused the change in proportion of insects with dark colored wings? Well, so we know that some of them are pale, some of them are dark, but then a year later, the dark wings are more common than the one with pale. This is due to natural selection. Okay, now which of the processes are carried out by bacteria? Well, so we can see that from nitrogen to ammonium, it is nitrogen fixation done by nitrogen fixing bacteria. Process 2, ammonium to nitrate, is done by nitrifying bacteria. And process 7, from which ammonia is transferred to nitrogen, is done by denitrifying bacteria. And then process 6, which bacteria are involved in decomposition, and therefore it is also involved in process 6. So 1, 2, 6, 7. So it is D is the correct answer. And 37, what is a characteristic of bacteria that makes them useful in genetic engineering? Well, this is not because of the code that is different. Their nucleus does not contain DNA. They are useful because they have plasmids, which can be transferred between cells. So C is the correct answer. So 38. What is the useful product of anaerobic respiration in the manufacture of bread? Well, it is carbon dioxide, because this carbon dioxide helps the bread to rise. So A is the correct answer. 39. Which of the following factors contribute to this, which causes species to become endangered? Well, it is because, firstly, it is because of habitat destruction. It is also because of poaching, hunting these animals, and introducing foreign species. So A is the correct answer. 40. If nitrate concentration in a lake increases, fish may die due to this event of this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, blah blah blah. What sequence of events will lead to the death of fish? This process is known as eutrophication. And eutrophication occurs in these following steps. So first of all, the nitrate concentration in the lake increases. This increases the growth of producer or aquatic plants and animals, so 3 is going to be first. And then secondly, what happened is that the increase, when the producer die, it will increase the decomposition of dead producers by bacteria. So the step 2 comes second, and then step 3 is the increased anaerobic respiration by decomposer, and then this leads to reduction in dissolved oxygen. So 3, 2, 1, and 4. So the answer here would be C as the reasonable answer. If you want more of these videos, please give it a thumbs up. If you really like them, comment down below.